watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are here on episode 98, I think, unless another episode that I'm hoping to do before this falls through, then this will probably jump back to like 96. But as of now, it's 98. Speaking into the future, if we get there and it's actually 96, just ignore this. You know, it's just part of the podcasting fun. But I'm excited to get into this next really stretch of Steven Spielberg's career. We wrapped up the 2010s a few weeks ago, and yeah, we're jumping in. Well, the 2000s. Now we're jumping into the 2010s with The Adventures of Tintin. So I'm excited to jump into that and get rolling on this kind of later section of Spielberg's career. And to help me do that, I have a new guest joining me. His name is Daniel Howat, coming to us from Las Vegas, the great city of lights. And yeah, Daniel, I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Excited to talk about, a director I think more people need to learn about, an up-and-comer. We'll see what happens with his career, you know.
We'll see where it goes. He's had a few good ones here and there, Yeah,
people will discover him soon, I think, yeah.
Oh, man. You say that, but I feel like, each generation kind of does discover him. Like I was listening to a podcast, another film podcast, and they had some younger people on, and they had mentioned like his West Side Story and loving that. And so, yeah, I feel like each generation kind of has their discoveries of old Spielberg. So
especially as Spielberg does have so many films that are ubiquitous that anybody in their 20s or older knows, like Jaws and E.T. and stuff like that. But he does have so many films that don't get talked about, don't get revisited, that people do have to discover. I think of like Empire of the Sun, or that's a good version. People don't necessarily need to discover 1941. No. But you are right. I do kind of think we'll dive into it later. I do kind of feel like Tintin will fall into that category as well of films that just people don't talk about much from Spielberg very often.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because like Empire of the Sun was a blind spot for me coming in, and that's been one of my favorite discoveries. That and Munich are probably my two favorite discoveries. Two really fantastic movies.
I haven't watched Munich in forever. I've been meaning to. Did you see September 5 last year?
I did. Yeah.
So good.
It was very good. Yeah.
It's been meaning to make me rewatch Munich, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But
yeah, it was good. That episode actually released. We're peek behind the curtain. It released today.
Hey, there you go.
So yeah, go back and listen to that one, because that's it's actually like still very relevant, extremely relevant. So
yeah.
But yeah, and then 1941. Yeah, that was a blind spot that I would have been okay with staying a blind spot.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it was fun to talk about. But yeah, so Daniel is a part of the Next Best Picture, which, from my limited understanding, y'all do kind of like, it's like an online publication, basically, and movie reviews. Y'all don't do TV, or do y'all?
We do, yeah,
okay.
We do. Yep, movies, TV. So great. Yeah, Next Best Picture is, we do reviews, journalism, blogs, those sorts of things, largely centered on awards, film and TV awards. So we really dive into Oscar season and cover the film industry from that angle. and highlighting, especially trying to highlight, underseen films and films that need the awards push to get out, which is why we love awards in the first place. So right now our Emmy predictions are live. So we're deep in the heart of Emmy season, and then every fall, of course, we're diving into Oscar season as well. Yeah. So
yeah, that's I tune in here and there when I see like a movie that I want to hear other people talk about, come up. But one that I always tune into is y'all's like Oscar predictions episode, which is usually really long.
Yes, too long. Yes. Yeah. I think we cracked 5 hours this year. I can't remember how long it was.
Man,
it's way too long.
But I listen to it, just because, I'm trying to do, cause like I'm not in the industry per se. So like, I don't have access to a lot of movies that like some of the things that are harder for me to get to. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to do my own predictions on an episode, I need to get some other insight. So
yeah, we really pride ourselves on our Oscar predictions and Emmy predictions as well, but especially we started on the film side. So Emmy predictions is still growing, but we really do think our coverage is some of the best. We really, that's why our Oscar episodes are so long, because we dig into every nook and cranny of the year and try to analyze what's going to win, what's a contender, all those sorts of things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Since I started doing all this, I've really started to really enjoy like Oscar season and the anticipation, and it's really fun. So definitely go check out Next Best Picture. You can just pop it in your Google machine and it'll come up.
We're everywhere. We're everywhere.
So
I'm largely, I contribute with Oscar predictions, but largely, and some reviews, but largely interviews is my thing. So that's where you'll see a lot of my contributions is, talking to people, talking about movies and TV, and about the craft that they make. Yeah,
that's great. So go check it out. Check out their website, their podcast. You can find that everywhere. And so, it's always fun to have other movie podcast people on here, because get to plug their shows, which usually they're pretty good. There's a lot of good movie podcasts out there.
That's right.
But one thing I do always love to ask my guests is about their first experience with the director we're covering. So Daniel, do you remember your first experience with Spielberg?
I don't. I was thinking about this a lot today.
Yeah.
I couldn't pinpoint my first memory of a Spielberg movie or when I first heard who Steven Spielberg was. I can't remember that, but I do have memories of growing up knowing who. Like, I feel like I always knew who Steven Spielberg was.
Yeah.
I don't know when that happened, but I feel like I did. And I just always knew of him as like one of the greatest directors to ever live, even if I didn't know what that meant or if it was true or anything like that. I think it is true. But so I was thinking about those memories. I definitely grew up watching E.T., Hook, Indiana Jones I grew up watching. So I definitely have a lot of memories of those films. And then later on, like getting in high school and, watching, the movies I wasn't allowed to watch earlier, Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List and Jaws even. I remember sort of developing a fondness in high school for the rest of his filmography that I hadn't seen. But I do have a specific memory. Well, I say specific. Now I don't know when it was. Sometime in childhood of reading like a kid's biography of Steven Spielberg. And there's that, mostly true story, like legend of him, breaking into the Universal lot and making an office for himself. So I have a memory of learning that story.
Yeah.
And thinking, man, how cool. Like, wow, this guy just really made it happen. So yeah, that was kind of like those were my early memories. And then as an adult, just like as I've gotten deeper into the industry and like learning and witnessing the impact that he's had all of these years in so many different ways, not just the films that he's made as a director, but the films he's made as a producer and what he's done with DreamWorks and other studios, and just all around his impact is pretty remarkable. And and seeing the impact he's still having, like I know, spoilers for the rest of this series, but like just seeing all the films even over the past decade that he's made, and the variety of films that he's making still today. In the last 10 years you still have as wide variety as Ready Player One, Bridge of Spies, Tintin, Lincoln, like
The Post.
Yeah, it's
BFG.
Such a wide variety. Exactly. BFG. Such a wide variety of movies. It's wild. But yeah, I was thinking about what is my favorite like Spielberg memory, and I think one of the greatest memories of my life in terms of on the film side of things was I got to attend. I was at AFI Fest in 2022. 2022. And I attended the U.S. premiere of The Fabelmans at the Chinese Theater with Spielberg and the cast, John Williams, all of them in attendance. Just seeing that movie in that place at that time, just felt really, really special. And so that is easily my favorite Spielberg memory. And then, like I said, I do a lot of interviews, and I've never interviewed Spielberg, I wish. Yeah. But getting to interview, I did interviews for The Fabelmans. So I did interview, the legendary Rick Carter, his production designer, and Mark Powell, who did the costumes on The Fabelmans. And so getting to speak, getting to have some sort of like touch to his legacy in some tiny way, has just been really, really incredible. So over all these years, it's really deepened my love of Spielberg, like even going from a kid who didn't know what it meant for him to be the quote unquote greatest director of all time, and all these, decades later, and it's just still that magic of who Spielberg is hasn't left me at all, So that was a long-winded answer to a very simple question, but those are that's my dump on.
No, I love it.
On what I think of Spielberg and what impact he's had in my world,
No, and I love that because it really is a a summation of what's been great going through this very long series. And just seeing the impact he's had over his career, and like we were talking about earlier, just like generation after generation kind of like rediscovers him, maybe from his past films or the new ones he's putting out, and he just keeps pumping them out. Like there's talks of a UFO film coming down the line, and I'm ready for it.
I was today. We're speaking the day after I wrapped up coverage of CinemaCon, which is where all the studio heads get to showcase things to exhibitors and theater owners. And so in the Universal presentation, they were teasing, they didn't show us anything from his new film, but they were talking about Spielberg is back next summer, and they were describing his new film as a return to form for his blockbuster sci-fi movie making. So even now today, he's still cranking out films in the classic mold that he created all those years ago.
Yeah, and you can see his impact everywhere. Like I remember I went and saw Jordan Peele's Nope. And people were like, how was it? And I was like, it was like Jaws in the sky. And I mean that in the best way possible. Like
100%. 100%.
It's like you could see Spielberg's imprint like all over that thing. Like, even to like pushing into like a low angle close up of whatever character is just like so Steven Spielberg. And, that was all in Jordan Peele's Nope. And so his impact is just everywhere, whether like in the filmmaking side or just like even just the film industry side of breaking through. I mean, just even thinking about like him and Lucas kind of together, basically just like saying, no, we're directors, y'all can give us, we don't need to take a salary, but y'all are going to give us a portion of the money that we know this movie's going to make. So
the film brat era is just so, I never get tired of learning about that era of film, really.
But I mean, Spielberg, legendary career. We gonna transition into talking about Tintin, because this is really like, this sort of is a transition film into the next kind of like portion of his career. I feel like he likes to wrap up parts of his career with Indiana Jones movies. And so he kind of wrapped up the 80s with Last Crusade. He wrapped up the 2000s with Crystal Skull, and yeah, he kicks off the next decade with The Adventures of Tintin. And so I like to start at the beginning. As the song says, it's a very good place to start. And so Georges Remy was born in 1907. And his pen name that people know him by is Hergé. And yeah, he started writing Tintin comics in a Belgian newspaper in 1929. And so these Tintin stories go way back, 1929. So we're coming up on, I guess, a century of Tintin. So maybe they'll re-release this in theaters, like for the anniversary, which would be cool, because even though this isn't like my favorite Spielberg, I feel like it would be cool to see in theaters, like in 3D.
Did you not see it when it came out?
I didn't. I was in college when this came out, and it probably just wasn't even on my radar. When I was in college, it was like what's the next Marvel midnight premiere, And so
sure.
So that's what I was doing in 2011. And either that or like those last couple Harry Potter movies, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
So those were like the movies I was going to see. But yeah, so yeah, it goes way back. He one of the funny things that I learned was that Tintin, which actually in the French is like Tintin, which I'm not going to attempt to say.
We should pronounce it that way the whole rest of the episode.
Yeah.
The Adventures of Tintin.
Y'all do not want to hear that. Me try to make that vowel that we don't have the rest of the episode. So we're going to just stick with Tintin. But it was funny in the special features. There was like a I don't know where he was originally, but he's lives in France, grew up. He plays the Ben Salad character. And he was just like, he was so upset because everyone was saying Tintin. He's like, it's not, it's Tintin. And then he was upset that people were calling the dog Snowy. He was like, it's Milou. But yeah, so, but yeah, the name Tintin doesn't mean anything. Hergé just was like, I like the way it sounds. And so that's his name. But yeah, he starts doing serialized strips. It leads to a Tintin magazine. He even starts in 1950 Hergé Studios that he uses to kind of release like a canonical Tintin books. And so I think he did 10 of those. The last one released posthumously after his death. And so yeah, he was known for this like clear line drawing style, which kind of is what it sounds like. All the you can see all the lines, around the character drawings. Yeah, he was like, his plots were well researched, based in like actual like history or current events, even a little splash of like political cultural commentary that was digestible for the kids, I guess, that were reading it. And yeah, this was a cool stat I saw. By 2007, it had been published in over 70 language, sold over 200 million copies, adapted for radio, TV, theater, and film. So just Tintin was a phenomenon, really, just not here in the U.S.
Right, exactly.
This was all in Europe because, he's Hergé was Belgian and kind of stationed in he's located in Brussels, and it was really like Tintin is really like a European phenomenon. People over there love Tintin. And so, yeah, Spielberg comes in 1981, where he's reading reviews in French magazines of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he keeps seeing this word over and over, Tintin, Tintin, and he talks about he thought it was like some word that he just didn't understand, and he was like, I need to figure out what this word means, and then he realizes they're saying this is just like Tintin. And so I think he said the first one he found was Prisoners of the Sun, and then Melissa Matheson, who wrote E.T., had spent some time as an au pair in France when she was younger, and was familiar with it, and gave him a French copy of The Crab with the Golden Claws, which will come up again. And Spielberg dove into it. He just read the French version he couldn't read the French really, but he was just able to understand it from the frames. And he kind of talked about how he had this very like cinematic way of expressing the action and everything within the comic frames that really spoke to him. And it is very Indiana Jones coded. It's that kind of serialized where you have action, and then in action that is used to like relaunch the action, and MacGuffins galore. And the other thing that was funny was Spielberg, one of the inspirations that he used for Raiders was this French movie L'Homme de Rio by Philippe de Broca from 1964, and which was inspired a little bit by Tintin. So
right.
So it all comes full circle. But yeah, so did you know about Tintin before this movie?
I had heard of Tintin, but like I had seen an image of the character.
Sure.
So like I knew what the character looked like. I understood the general concept of Tintin, but had never and still have never read Tintin.
Yeah.
Actually, my kids and I coincidentally, before you asked about me coming on, we actually just watched Tintin with them for the first time about a month and a half ago.
Oh, nice.
They're 6 years old, and they loved it, which was awesome. And so I was at a thrift store and happened to see a Tintin book, and I was like, let's do it. So I bought. So I have one now. I have.
Nice.
I should have brought it with me. I don't know why I didn't bring a prop. But yeah. So I have a Tintin book, and we're gonna start reading it here soon. But have not yet. So
yeah.
So I'm like close, but I haven't done it.
Yeah. I was wondering if my son would do it, would enjoy it too. But yeah, it's really like I've never read any of them. I did try to check out one for the library, but it just wasn't ready in time for me to like have with me. So we, I was one. That's good to hear. So I might have to show it to my son sometime soon because he's also 6.
Hey, there you go.
And so
has he seen any Spielberg films yet?
Has he seen any Spielberg? He has not. We do have the BFG sitting on the shelf we like to like read out loud to him.
Yeah.
And so that's on the like to be read soon shelf for read out loud. So I feel like that would be a good one.
That was their first Spielberg. That was my kid's first Spielberg movie. We read all the Dole books.
Yeah.
So we read the BFG together, and then that was their first Spielberg.
Nice.
So we watched that for the first time with them, maybe within the last year sometime.
Cool.
So they've seen that, and then we did Hook. Actually, we did that, then Tintin, and then Hook. So those are 3. Still haven't gotten to E.T. I think E.T.'s next.
Yeah. So we've done for like me and him. We read Fantastic Mr. Fox, and we watched that. So me and my wife watch that every Thanksgiving.
Nice.
So now he's just like included in that.
That's awesome.
And then we also did James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah.
So the BFG will definitely it'll probably end up being his first one.
Nice.
But yeah, Tintin would probably be a good second. So
yeah.
But yeah, I really like when you see like the image of Tintin, it kind of is one of those drawings that's kind of like I feel like I've seen this before.
Yeah.
And it might even be it. I don't know if it's because I actually had seen, a Tintin drawing before, or just because like Hergé's like art style was kind of inspirational for a lot of people. And so you kind of have seen, comic art that looks like that. So I don't know what it was, but definitely looks familiar when you see an image of Tintin.
100%. Yeah, I think you're totally right. I do think it's a mixture of maybe I saw him somewhere, or maybe it's just the art style being everywhere. I think that's totally true. I did grow up reading the comics in the newspaper and stuff like that. And I do feel like there's a lot of similarities between the simplistic style that I'm sure he wasn't the first one, but that he was certainly a pioneer of. Yeah, that was so pervasive in culture, even till today.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, and even just knowing like he was doing these starting back in 1929. So there's I feel like you would be hard pressed to find like many people that were as successful as him that were getting their start way back then. So but yeah, so even Hergé really early on wanted to turn this into a film. I read that he approached Walt Disney in 1948 without any success, unfortunately. I feel like Walt Disney is like, I know what'll sell, and people here don't know what that is. So that's just me speculating, but
I do feel like he would have been a great match for like Max Fleischer, and Out of the Inkwell, like. Because he did all the early Superman cartoons and Betty Boop and a lot of these, and I feel like Max Fleischer would have been a great match for Tintin, but never. What could have been? Yeah,
it did get like some TV adaptations, like in Europe mostly. I don't know that they showed here, but like some of the cast members, like the British cast members, were like, "Oh yeah, I grew up watching the Tintin." Cartoon on TV and stuff, so it did get some adaptations, but Hergé was like very big on like respecting and honoring like the world that he's created, and he just didn't trust Hollywood. So I guess he was like willing to take a chance on Walt Disney, but just wasn't ready to sell it to Hollywood yet. Which is fair, But yeah, so Spielberg it had never gotten the adaptation here in the U.S., but Spielberg really wants to do it. He contacts Casterman, which was the publisher of the comics at the time, at least. I don't know who still does, but he was able to get in contact with Alain Baron, Hergé's secretary, and he came and met Spielberg at Universal early in 1983. So the Adventures of Tintin was a long time in the making. He was able to talk to Hergé over the phone, and they had plans to meet up, but Hergé died unfortunately in March of 1983, right before Spielberg was set to go meet with him to talk more about Tintin. But it really unfortunate. Spielberg did have some conditions and stuff that he wanted to retain creative control. He wanted a trilogy. He had plans to pass off the other two in the trilogy to Roman Polanski and Francois Truffaut, which would have been interesting. And the plans back then were like a stylized live action. So lots of prosthetics and kind of trying to pull out that caricatured look with live action characters. He wanted Henry Thomas from E.T. to play Tintin and Jack Nicholson to play Haddock, which I don't know what a Jack Nicholson Haddock would have been like.
I can kind of see that more than I can see Henry Thomas as Tintin.
Yeah,
I'm picturing
me too.
I'm picturing like Dick Tracy, the live action Dick Tracy from Warren Beatty. That's what I'm picturing, and I don't like that. I don't like that style, so I am very glad that didn't happen.
Yeah. But so, he's not able to meet with Hergé, but Spielberg and Kennedy still go to Brussels. They're invited by Fanny Remy, his widow, and Spielberg's able to explore the estate. He goes to Hergé's office, goes to his studios, and Fanny is very on board with Spielberg going through with this adaptation. So yeah, they sign a contract in February '84. It gets formalized in June. 1985, Melissa Matheson proposes an adaptation of Tintin in the Congo from 1931, but Spielberg doesn't really like it that much. Polanski drafts a screenplay for the Odysseus Scepter from 1939, but Spielberg is caught up in other films at that time. I would imagine he's kind of on those Oscar grasping movies of the late 80s.
Yeah.
And so and it just becomes one of those things where there's so many different directions you can go with it that it's almost like he had what do you call it, like decision paralysis.
Yeah.
And he ends up just letting the option lapse in 1990. And so it's real. So it goes on hiatus until 2002. Kathleen Kennedy, that is, suggests getting the rights back. It took a long time to negotiate with the Belgian Foundation in control of the rights. They didn't want to give over full creative control. They were trying to protect Hergé's work. Mm-hmm. And Spielberg wants absolute creative control because he's Steven Spielberg. So, but Stéphane Sperry, who was an executive producer on the film, was able to she was like a key for the. I say she. It might have been, that might be a he. I don't know. Anyways, this person was a key to the reconciliation there, and really gets it worked out. He had Leo DiCaprio, who was 28 at the time. He was wanting him to play Tintin. Tom Hanks for Haddock. So,
which you can really see both of those.
I could see it. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me than
Henry Thomas.
than Henry Thomas, and Nicholson would have been fine, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, Tom Hanks I could definitely see as Haddock for sure. Yeah. But again, the discussions drag out. Spielberg is hesitating, and it's really not until 2004, as Spielberg is presenting the Best Picture Oscar to Peter Jackson for Return of the King, which is the first time they meet, that he kind of has a revelation. He had been impressed by Weta Digital, who is Jackson's effects company. He had been impressed by Gollum and the work that they had been doing, and so he sends them a request for a CGI Snowy, because at the time he's still planning a live action movie. And so he's like, I want to do the dog CGI, can y'all render up a test for me, send it out to us. And so have you seen any of the footage from the test they sent?
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh,
no.
Man. So if you can get your hands on the DVD or Blu-ray with the special features, it's worth or you could probably find it on YouTube.
Sure.
So they send back the test, and Spielberg's watching it, and the dog's, jumping around. It actually looks pretty good. The little CGI dog, it's kind of hopping around. And then who should show up but Peter Jackson himself, dressed in full Haddock, Captain Haddock garb, talking about how much he loves Tintin, and so Spielberg decides in that moment, he's like, well, why don't we just go full animated? He's like, Peter, you should come on and produce it, and if we go through with this trilogy, you can direct one. And so, he finally makes the right choice to go fully animated on this movie. And so the next step is getting some scripts. He gets a couple of scripts sent to Peter Jackson for The Crab with the Golden Claws and The Secret of the Unicorn, which the Crab with the Golden Claws wasn't a robust enough story for a feature film, apparently. But that's where you meet Captain Haddock. So they kind of ended up taking that element of that book and mixing it with The Secret of the Unicorn, and then a little bit of Red Rackham's Treasure, which makes sense since Red Rackham is in the movie. But so that's really how things really got rolling with this. and which is it's always crazy to me when you look into like the history of how a movie got made and realize like, oh, this was what like nearly like 25 to 30 years in the making before they finally got rolling with it.
And how many different versions could have been, you know? I think it's fascinating. It's also incredible, you know. I think Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson are such a great pairing together, you know? And I still wish we had gotten the rest of the trilogy. I don't know. I know this movie wasn't really that successful financially, so I understand, but I really wish they could have pulled that off. Yeah.
It really is funny, like, you know, it's one of those things where, why hasn't Spielberg and Peter Jackson already worked together, you know?
Yeah.
And why haven't they worked together since, you know? Because from what I could tell in all the like the behind the scenes footage, they seem to like be really like buddy, get along really well. But you know, that's just kind of how it goes, I guess. With the movie industry, you kind of get caught up in your own things, and but yeah, you know, so
the Hobbit trilogy comes along.
And I mean, you got to make that
right.
You've got oh man, so obviously, as far as like the crew goes, Peter Jackson and Kathleen Kennedy are producers along with Spielberg. The screenplay, so at some point they were talking to Edgar Wright about the screenplay. He was doing something at the time, so he's like, he knew that Peter Jackson liked the new Doctor Who series, so he's like, you should check out Stephen Moffat, who was he was like the main writer for the new Doctor Who series. And so Stephen Moffat wrote like the first draft or two of the movie and really like built it out. But then there was some sort of writer strike, and then there was something else going on, and he kind of like had to choose between Doctor Who and Tintin, and he probably rightly chose Doctor Who as like going and producing that. So Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish came on and kind of like polished up the script, added in a lot of like the humor and some of the dialogue and stuff. And so you really kind of get like a good mix of like the decent like structure, I think probably from Moffat, and a lot of like the good like gags and whatnot from Wright and Cornish, is what I imagine.
It is wild looking back on the crew that's responsible for this movie. I mean, all of them are stellar directors. Like all of them. You know, obviously Edgar Wright already was at that point, but has even risen more since. And Joe Cornish too hadn't yet directed at that point, right? When was Attack the Block? I can't remember. Maybe it was 2011. I think. But,
it was sometime around that period.
Pretty remarkable to see them all working on this one film.
And then even Simon Pegg was originally supposed to work with Wright on the movie too, and then Spielberg was like, well, actually, would you act in it? So which I can't, it seems like I know that Pegg has written for some movies. I just can't think of what they are. I don't know. Does he partner with Wright for their movies in writing?
I think so. Some of them. I think he wrote that movie Paul. Not very good movie, but
the alien guy.
The alien one. I can't remember if he's written much else, but he has done some writing. So
So I mean that's really cool. Janusz Kaminski is credited with like cinematography consultant, which I guess makes sense. Spielberg really relies on him for like lighting and all that. So, and you can definitely see a little bit of that Kaminski touch.
Absolutely.
And the way some of these scenes are lit. Some of the more like natural scenes is just kind of like feels kind of standard, but definitely like anytime there's like in the dark or like in, you know, creeping around some estate or something, it's like, oh yeah, that's
the harsh shadows, the bright lights,
the backlighting. Yeah,
exactly.
So you can definitely see Kaminsky in there, even though like it's not like the typical cinematographer role that you would have. There's a few virtual camera operators, I should say, and Steven Meisler and David Paul, and Spielberg was uncredited for that. But when you watch the like extra features, you almost exclusively see Spielberg holding the virtual camera like controller. So you know, I think he probably did most of it himself.
Sure.
And but yeah, editors Michael Kahn, obviously. His tried and true guy. He does so. Basically, what happens with a movie like this is they do like a cut of the movie to basically this is what the movie is, and then the Weta team has to go in and basically like add in all the stuff to it, to the cut that they send. So you do have some other editors that are probably like the virtual like editors in Jabez Olson and Chris Plummer. John Williams does the music, which is one of my favorite parts of this movie. I think the music is great in this movie. John Williams just does a really good adventure score.
It always fits. Anytime I'm complimenting a John Williams score, it feels so like obvious, like no kidding, it's a good score. But it's like, no, really, this is a really good score. You know, I love the way that it has like these bright woodwinds that are perfect for like a whodunit sort of thing with some light percussion. And then it can also get big and epic and feel a lot like, you know, Indiana Jones or something like that.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you say that complimenting the John Williams score is like obvious, but if the, you know, anyone that's listening that's been like listening through with the series will know that like me personally, like watching all the Spielberg films in succession, you kind of get like a little bit tired of the John Williams scores because like you can start to see like he's really just like reusing stuff over and over again. Even like themes like even like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Marion's theme basically is Leia and Han's theme, and it's just like a different like little riff on that same like melody and style. So like you start to like notice those things and you're like, dude, so that's why like Catch Me If You Can is like one of my favorite John Williams scores because it's so different. But I did really like this one. It's really good. He kind of is pulling, it's kind of like a best hits John Williams.
That's true.
Yeah, you even have like he's even pulling back from like Jaws, like some of the like riding across the ocean in the boat stuff that sounds very like pirate-ish in Jaws, like pirate adventure you get in this movie. And even like the opening credits is very like Catch Me If You Can.
I thought the same thing. It really did feel reminiscent of that. Yeah. Maybe, and I know part of that is probably just because we don't see those sorts of credit sequences very often.
Sure.
But still, the music did feel really reminiscent.
Yeah. It was like, it started rolling because this was a blind spot for me. I had never seen it before. So it started rolling. And I was like, this is a Catch Me If You Can opening. Because, you know, I covered that not too long ago. So, but yeah, he recorded the score just like right after Michael Kahn got the cut finished, the first cut. So the score was really done like a year and a half before the movie was completed.
Wow.
And so, which probably, it probably helped them when they were like building out like all the digital stuff to kind of like match stuff up with the score. So it probably worked out for the best.
Definitely.
But yeah, I do like elements of the score. Like, John Williams talks about using the euphonium, which is basically like a small tuba. And it kind of, it comes through most in the Thompson and Thompson's like little theme that they have. So it kind of, the euphonium is really able to make these like really funny, silly sounding like whoops and stuff. And so I thought that was cool. Him it's fun to watch John Williams talk about something that you could tell he had a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one. And then the other thing I thought was cool that he talked about was kind of musically connecting the haddocks. So like the present haddock and the past haddock, and how like when it's doing that sequence jumping back and forth, there's this theme that runs through, but in the different, like the modern style and then the piratey style. That was really cool to hear, like, because I didn't really notice it watching the movie, but then like hearing them talk about it and they played it, you're like, oh, that's really cool. But yeah, John Williams, I guess he's pretty good. A lot of these guys are new names, because it's just a totally different format. We've been like repeating the same names over and over again here recently, in the series. But like sound, John Neal, I don't know who that guy is. Gary Rydstrom was like a consultant, and that's the Spielberg guy.
Legend.
Yeah, but sound effects by Brent Burge and Chris Ward. Art direction by Andriel Jones and Jeff Wisniewski. Which props to those guys, because there's a ton of like decorating that they had to do for this movie. You have, which by the way, this is just the part where I just read out names, just because like how often do these people's names get read out loud?
Yeah.
And so like, let's give them props. Motion capture supervisors, you have Philip Bolt, who I guess is the main guy, and then Kevin Cushing is the Giant Studios guy, which we'll talk about what Giant Studios is in a minute. And Dejan Momcilovic, I'd probably pronounce that wrong, was the main Weta Digital guy. And then, you have the motion caption coordinator and Frederick Kublikowski. So, yeah, that one was tough too. Also Weta Digital. And then Peter Jackson really like was kind of he's credited as second unit director, but he was really probably the main like director for the Weta side of things. So yeah, that's the main part of the crew.
Hi. Quick reminder that yes, you can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show.
Let's talk about the cast, because the cast is really fun for this one.
Yeah.
Spielberg talked about casting for motion capture is very different, because you really want to get for motion capture, especially like the place that they were with motion capture by the time this was being made, which was even more like advanced than when it got started. You really want actors that can really like go for it and pull out all of their expressions and like kind of like not hold back and over express and stuff. And so he went for like naturally expressive actors. So that was cool, and I think that does come through, especially if you do watch like the special features and see them with all the dots on their face doing the acting. It's fun. But yeah, so Tintin needed to be an actor that wasn't too old and also not too young. So really like fine line, I think, for Tintin.
Yeah, you don't really know. You don't really get a read on how old he's supposed to be. He is just like a young man.
Yeah,
you know.
From what I could understand from like the research I did, Hergé kind of saw him as like 15, 16. But it's like this, he's kind of like this enigma because he doesn't have a family.
Yeah.
He lives in an apartment by himself. He doesn't seem to go to school. He has like, somehow has money that we really, because you never see him write anything.
Yeah.
Even though he's like a reporter or something, apparently. And so he's just kind of this enigma. You just kind of have to roll with it. Like, okay, yeah, sure. He's a teenager with, unlimited amount of money and is a reporter that never reports on anything.
Right.
Or at least not in the movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does in the comics. So he had originally cast 18-year-old Thomas Brodie Singler, who was in Love Actually and appeared in The Queen's Gambit. So I'm not familiar with him. So
he's good. You can totally see him as Tintin. Like they visually look a lot alike.
Okay.
Like in a live action Tintin, that's pretty great casting.
Yeah. I guess he did also talk about like you are kind of free to not have to cast people that look like the character when you do motion capture. So that was probably a plus. But I wasn't familiar with this actor, so it's cool to hear that he actually like kind of looks Tintin-ish. But that was in March of 2008, and then there was the delay, and Universal kind of backed out, which we'll talk about at one point, which maybe Singler was tied to Universal, so he was unavailable. And so, they cast Jamie Bell. He had been in Peter Jackson's King Kong, and Spielberg had loved him in the movie Billy Elliot, which he talked about how he had this like subtlety to his acting, but it's also a very physical performance in that movie, which I haven't seen.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. He should have been nominated for Best Actor for that movie as a kid. He's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. I saw some like clips from it, so I was like, I can definitely see like this is a physical performance. But that Spielberg and Peter Jackson are like, this is our next guy. And Jamie Bell actually, like, he was one of the kids that was like, I remember watching Tintin when I was a kid. So he was happy to come on as Tintin. Andy Serkis as Captain Haddock. It was kind of... I think Peter Jackson and Spielberg both kind of like were like, it was Serkis, and there wasn't really any other choice for Haddock.
It is hard to imagine anybody else. Like, I can totally see why, like, that could have been Tom Hanks in an earlier Spielberg movie. Totally get that. But it is like, of course it's going to be Andy Serkis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was really the only choice. He was also the only motion capture veteran on the set. So, other than the crew, obviously, but the only actor that had done motion capture before. So, he was probably like doing a lot of consulting with the other guys, I'm sure. I guess like I should have known this about Serkis. But hearing him talk, he's like very thorough with his like prep for roles. He does like a lot of research. He was like researching on like the life of a seaman for this role, which I'm like, to me, I'm like, that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but like, I guess like actors have to go through like their method and whatever they do to get ready. He kind of like was even like thinking as deep as what sort of accent should I do, and landed on a Scottish accent because he felt like it had the most like raw emotionality to it, which I think is a good choice.
Yeah, definitely.
But so Serkis is great. He's always, anytime he's like doing any sort of like really just acting or motion capture acting, I'm like, I'm interested in seeing that. So directing is kind of not so sure if Serkis is the best director, but
I agree with you on that. I haven't really been wowed by his work as a director yet. But
But acting wise, like, always love him.
It's still criminal that he. Well, first of all, he should have been nominated for an Oscar for Gollum, honestly. I mean, he should have gotten... That was such a groundbreaking... It was a great performance. That was also groundbreaking. Yeah. And I think you don't get that combination too often. Yeah. And at the very least, I'm far from the first person to say this, but it is kind of criminal that he hasn't gotten an honorary Oscar of some kind. Yeah. Like, he's so revolutionary, not only in... taking on performance capture roles, but in what he has done for the industry in that. I mean, it's because of Circus, and yes, many others, but that we have, all the superheroes doing all the motion capture work that they do, and all of these roles. I mean, he is just such a pioneer, both in front of the camera and behind.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because it reminded me that in the special features, he called himself a motion capture evangelist. I mean, for good or for bad. I mean, you could also argue that it's harmed some performances or an over reliance on CGI, things like that. Totally understand those arguments, but it has impacted the industry in like massive ways. Yeah, and his whole thing was like his push for motion capture over just plain, CGI or whatever, is because he feels like as an actor, you get to actually act with motion capture. Even if it is in like this sterile environment, you're still like reacting and acting within an environment. And so it's kind of like, if this is the direction we're headed, I'm going to push for this version of it. Is kind of like the sense I got from the way he talked about it. And so I appreciated that, because there is a sense in which when you go too heavily CGI, you do lose a bit of that, that the rawness of like an actor acting in a like an actual environment.
For sure.
And voice acting is its own thing, and there's phenomenal voice actors, obviously. But I do appreciate that aspect of what Circus has done, for sure. Even if it has had, every advancement is going to have some sort of negative spin off of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So moving right along, Daniel Craig as Sakharine. Sakharine was actually a secondary character in The Secret of the Unicorn. And not really big at all, but they turned him into like the main villain, and I guess kind of like connected him to Red Rackham and did all that with the script. So Spielberg said about Craig that he felt like he was a good choice because he can play a good, what he called quote unquote champagne villain, which is a guy that can be crude when he needed, but has this like mock elegance. Yeah. And I was like, that's a really good description of, and because Craig, when he talked, he was like, I just kind of based it off the like stereotypical English bad guy. And when you think of like the stereotypical English bad guy, it is like crude, but also like a mock elegance to him.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's funny. They were like basically like saying the same thing, but in different ways. And so, I think Craig is great here.
Yeah. Great villain.
He was nervous about the whole motion capture thing, but he got on board pretty quick, I guess. This was a genius bit of casting, I think, in getting Simon Pegg and Nick Frost as Thompson and Thompson. One has the P, one doesn't. If you didn't catch on when you watched the movie, but I think it's a really like a genius bit of casting. The funny thing is when you watch the special features, the way they edited that part of the the documentary together is they put back to back Spielberg saying that it was Peter Jackson's idea and Peter Jackson saying it was Spielberg's idea.
That's good.
So, so they don't even know whose idea it was.
Well, neither of them is crediting Edgar Wright. Is that what we're it's gotta be. I mean, come on. He co-wrote the movie.
Right. He co-wrote the movie, and he's written 2 movies for these guys. So at least 2.
At that point, at least 2.
Yeah. But yeah, so they were great. They wanted a comedy duo. This was like the perfect choice, I think. They do a lot of they do a lot of work on trying to like tap into the silent era traditions of Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy, which you definitely see a lot of in those characters.
Yeah, I'm glad that they did cast a comedy duo. I mean, Pegg and Frost are a great choice for that. But, I think a lesser film would have cast one person for both roles, Yeah. And maybe that would have been fine, but I do think there's a little bit of magic there that it is 2 people like playing off of each other,
Yeah, especially because when we talk about the motion capture, what they did was they had some choreographers, and I think they even mentioned some Cirque du Soleil guys that came in and coached them on how to synchronize their movements. So when you watch the behind the scenes, they're actually doing all the Thompson and Thompson stuff that's totally synchronized. Cool. And all the movements and stuff. So it's fun, and it works really well in the movie.
Yeah.
I think those are my favorite characters in the movie. The Thompsons.
Oh yeah, they're hilarious. Yeah.
The rest are really kind of side characters in the movie. I mentioned Gad Amala, who plays Omar bin Salad. He was he said he loves being able to do his Moroccan accent. So I think he might be from Morocco, maybe, is the sense I got.
Okay.
But yeah, he's barely in the movie, just for the one scene, along with the Bianca Castiafor character, who they included because she's a recurring character. She's not actually in those stories, but she is a recurring character in the Tintin universe. That's
gotcha.
Well liked, and so she's the opera singer that comes up and breaks the bulletproof glass with her voice.
Right.
Which is a gag that I wasn't sure if it was I wasn't sure if I should roll my eyes or laugh, sort of gag.
Yeah.
But that was the role was played by, quote unquote role was played by Kim Stengel. But Renee Fleming does the vocals. She's a world renowned soprano. And she was on the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Then you have other guys in Raytel as the Nestor, the butler, and also the vendor at the beginning. Carrie Elwes plays the pilot. That's in the plane that they steal. Toby Jones plays Silk, the pickpocket guy. So yeah, you kind of have some. It's really a bunch of that guy kind of actors playing all the side roles. So that's always fun. And then the other fun fact, this isn't really casting, but the caricature artist at the very beginning was designed to look like Hergé. So that was kind of another little nod to him, which I thought that was a fun way to start with him getting the actual Tintin drawing.
Yeah, that was very creative. Yeah.
But yeah, so as I mentioned before, they're 1 month out from shooting, and Universal is set to produce this trilogy, and they back out, as studios like to do. What I read was that they were scared of the production costs, which I think this had $130 million budget, and also the 30% total gross revenues that were demanded between Spielberg and Peter Jackson, which I don't know. My whole thing is you're Universal Studios and you don't know that Steven Spielberg is going to ask for that.
Right.
Like y'all have worked with him so much, you know what he asks for.
Right.
So I guess they just weren't so sure about it.
Yeah.
But they do just in time reach an agreement with Paramount and Sony, and they agreed to do 2 films. So there was originally supposed to be 2 films. But I guess because of the money it makes, they really like don't go through with it. But
yeah,
or maybe this still like on the docket, and maybe we will eventually get it. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't checked in a long time, but it's been on like Spielberg's upcoming projects on IMDb for like, you know, how old's the movie? Almost, you know, 15 years old.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's still there, but
yeah,
you know, I guess everybody's just holding out hope.
It is one of those things where like it's not like that. It's like dated. It's still like
they could do it. Yeah.
It's just like a kid's adventure story. Like there's not really like anything that's like, oh, that's too old now, we can't do another one. No, you can just jump right in and probably do it, and it would be great
with the same cast. Honestly, you don't have to. I mean, it's motion capture. You don't have to replace anybody.
Yeah. But yeah, so they get started in January of 2009. It's kind of like a traditional toast thing that Spielberg does before shooting. It was cool. He read like this very sweet letter from Hergé's widow, Fanny, to all the cast and crew that was there. But yeah, they go to Giant Studios in Los Angeles. It was the same one used by James Cameron for Avatar to do the motion capture stuff. And James Cameron was actually like there to kind of show Spielberg the ropes around the studio. And like the size of like the place that they shoot in, which is called the Volume, which we'll talk about, is about the size of a basketball court. And then, you know, the room's a bit bigger than that, obviously. And so, yeah, they shot for 32 days there. And Spielberg even put like blown up character references from the comics all around the walls, so that the cast and crew had kind of like things to draw from, be able to look up and be like, oh yeah, this is an expression my character makes, sort of thing. So that was cool. And really, like, this is the most atypical filming experience in Spielberg's career. There's no, I guess he do some of this in BFG, some motion capture stuff. I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely. The BFG is an entirely motion capture character, and there are other giants, of course, in the story. So after
a little
this,
bit,
he's done some of that, but of course it's in a live action setting largely. So
it is a little different.
I also think it's interesting how much, you know, this is Spielberg's. This is Spielberg's only animated film of his career as a director.
Right.
But he has worked in animation or with animation so many times throughout his career. I mean, An American Tail, and then building up DreamWorks and producing so many of those films.
Land Before Time.
Land Before Time,
that was a big one in my childhood.
Absolutely. A lot of those Don Bluth films. I actually just read Don Bluth's memoir, which is phenomenal. And it's really interesting hearing him talk about his relationship with Spielberg, because, you know, Don Bluth did The Secret of Nim, and then Spielberg loved that and called him up and said, let's do this. Let's make An American Tail together. And pitched Don Bluth that. Yeah. And then they made Land Before Time together. I think that was their last film together. And then, very interestingly, Bluth talks about Spielberg ghosting him. And said, it just kind of, Bluth talks about like not really knowing what happened with their relationship, and then you know, he goes to found DreamWorks, which is part of it, but Bluth just talks about going like, we worked together for all these years, and then we just didn't, and he never really knew why or anything like that. They didn't have a falling out, they just didn't work together anymore. So it's very interesting, but so to see him come all these years later to finally direct his own animated film, you know, obviously a very different sort of style, but he obviously has some sort of love for the medium of animation. I haven't really come across quotes of him talking that much about animation in general. I'm sure they're out there, but he clearly loves this medium.
Yeah, it's the stuff that I usually hear him talk about because I'm kind of inundated with Spielberg stuff, is
Sure.
there's not a lot of him talking about animation other than like, oh yeah, I watched this and it inspired like this sort of thing. And so it's a lot of Spielberg kind of watches everything. You know, he's the movie brats, they all just watch everything. And so yeah, it would be like, you know, a Looney Tunes kind of thing inspired this, or, you know, that's kind of like what you typically hear. But yeah, I haven't done, you know, even like, you know, DreamWorks, you have, you know, the SKG, that, you know, the K and the, or can't remember if this is the K or the G.
Yeah, no, he's the K, he's the S. Yeah, Spielberg. Spielberg. Katzenberg, and then Geffen. Yeah, David Geffen. Yeah,
and Geffen is Geffen's the animation guy. So even.
Well, no, he's the music guy. David,
Katzenberg is the
exactly.
animation guy. Yeah,
exactly. Came
and
from
so
Disney. Yep.
So like you have, you know, Spielberg has probably control over the live action stuff, and Katzenberg is doing even with like DreamWorks, you know, and they eventually break off into their own thing.
Yep.
And so yeah, like I think he really likes animation, but he doesn't really do much other than produce them and
which is understandable. I mean, it is
stuff,
an entirely
you know?
different medium. You know, it's totally made in a different way, so it makes sense. It's just it is interesting to see the way he's dabbled in it over the years.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
and I mean, like story wise, An American Tale is very much like a Spielberg story.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very Spielberg coded.
Yeah.
So like you can see his influence in it, but yeah, I think the interesting thing with getting to this point with the technology and motion capture is this is sort of, if Spielberg is going to make an animated movie, it's going to be with this sort of technology.
Pushing technology forward in some way.
Yes. And so and really just like this specifically is just such a very Spielberg way of making an animated movie, because as we'll get into, like he basically has like free reign to do what he wants with the camera. And that's like, for a guy like Spielberg, that's like, you know, going to the best playground in the world as a kid, you know?
Right.
And so, he really embraces it. And Peter Jackson was there on set in person the first week of shooting, but he went back to New Zealand, and he's the funny thing is he's just like there on the screen all the time. So I'm like, why didn't you just stay if you were just gonna be on the screen all day? But I guess like his family's probably there and stuff, so it makes sense. But
I assume he was in pre-production on Hobbit at that point, right? I mean, because Hobbit came out in 2012, right? Year after this, I think.
I guess so.
2013. I can't remember what year that came out, but it
was around that time, because I think I think the last one came out in like 2014, 2015, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. And I think that's really, honestly, I don't know the whole backstory of why we didn't get a second film, other than lack of confidence in the finances. But I mean, Peter Jackson wasn't going to direct the Hobbit films. Guillermo del Toro was going to do those. And then that fell through, and so he took them on. So I that's got to be a major reason for the holdup. That and money, of course.
Yeah, that might be another big one. Which I've always wished we would have gotten the Del Toro version of those. I think that would have been a lot of fun, but alas, we did not. So talking about like the cinematography, the camera work, even with all the attempts to like honor and capture the world of Hergé, Spielberg's hand is definitely like seen all over the camera work. And we already talked about like the Kaminsky stuff with the lighting. And you know, it's definitely like interesting. So one of the things that is interesting is Spielberg, Spielberg shoots on film. And so when he shot this movie, they were like giving him, like teaching him the ropes of like, okay, here's how we do it. You know, you get your masters, and then we'll do all the coverage and all that in post. Like, don't worry about that. And Spielberg's basically like, no, I want to do it the normal way. And so, and he's able to, you know, Spielberg is very much into, I want to be on location or on the set, and I want to be able to like make my decisions on the spot when I get there and get a feel for everything. And so with this, he's able to do that. Even more freely, really, because you don't have to reset the lights when you change camera angles, or point the camera in a different direction. You don't have to reset all that stuff. It just does it in the computer automatically. Everything's lit how it's supposed to be. And so, yeah, it's like fast paced shooting. He's doing it just like a normal shoot where you do your shot, close up coverage, medium shot, move on to the next thing. And yeah, he just designing I think it was like might've been like the Giant Studios supervisor or something, in the extra features, was just talking about like how he was just like amazed. He's just like designing all the shots as they go, and just not used to working in that way. He's used to like having to figure that all out himself, probably in post. And he's like, this is making my job easier.
I do feel like you get a sense of Spielberg playing in this one, you know, because like you said, he can have so much more control than he does with a live action film. And so that's where I think we get, you know, like that big sequence in the Bagar scene where the big chase, the 3-minute take, you know, you can totally feel him just playing with these action figures of characters. Yes. And I think it turns out, I think that's one of Spielberg's best action sequences. I think it's all the things we love about the action in Indiana Jones and many other things, where it is hilarious and thrilling and inventive and creative, and you have a freaking building chasing them down. I think it's amazing. I love that sequence so much.
Yeah, and it is fun. It's fun to see him play. We'll get into this like after we get done talking about production stuff and just talk about like our thoughts on the movie in general. I think it ends up being like a little too much for me. Sure. It gets a bit distracting to me of like, I can tell he's playing, and so it's hard to like just like get that out of my mind. And a little bit of that just comes from like the way I'm watching it, which is like for this series. That's why I was like, if it came to movie theaters, I would really love to go see this, where I could just like not think about that stuff and just be immersed in the world. I bet I would enjoy it a little bit more. But yeah, we'll get into that. But like, he is definitely playing, even if like for some people's taste like me, it might be like a little bit too much playing.
Sure. I think that's the thing. I think for me, you know, the movie is light, right? It's like, it's very light, which is probably the biggest criticism I have of the film, is that there's not much deeper, you know, things going on here. This is a surface level adventure meant for fun and not much else than that. Right. And which has pros and cons, but if you can lean in and let yourself enjoy just the play of it, then I'm like, I have a great time with this movie, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like what you kind of have to go in with no expectations and just like enjoy it. It's like a Shyamalan movie, you know. If you go in expecting it to be a certain thing, chances are it's not going to be that thing, and you're not going to like it. So just go in and be like, okay, what kind of fun are we going to have? Yeah, because typically Shyamalan is just having a lot of fun. His movies sometimes feel like they're supposed to be serious, but I don't know that they really are. Even his more serious movies, I don't think Shyamalan's all that serious. So
yeah, true.
Like I had such a fun time with Trap. Like it's and it's very like winking too. I feel like you can
you have to be in the right mindset for it. You're totally right. Like I think Trap's a great example of a movie that throughout the whole movie I was like, this is so dumb. This is so stupid.
It is.
I don't like anything that's happening. But my heart was racing a little bit, and I was kind of laughing with it, and I was like, okay, this is very dumb, but it's also kind of working on me. Yeah. So there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's like, it's very winking, and it's like, there's a look, like a eye contact with the camera sort of last shot that like just like highlights that and keys you in on like, okay, like Shyamalan knows exactly like how ridiculous all this is. He's just having fun, like
right.
And like you can with this movie, it's like he is having the time of his life. He's like, I can do shots from like under a desk, without having to like rig up some like weird way to place the camera. Like, let's do it, I can send the camera in and out of buildings, windows and stuff on this chase scene through Bagar because why not? I can do whatever I want with the camera. And so
right, exactly.
There's a degree to which it's just kind of like fun to see Spielberg get to have fun in a way that he can't usually,
I think you especially see that in like the creativity of all of that in like the transitions, which are so magnificent.
Yes.
Like my favorite is when they're in the desert after the plane crash, and he's having Haddock is having those flashbacks to the previous pirate life, and when the pirate ship is coming over the dunes. I mean, I love that sequence. I think it's a perfect use of this medium, right? I think lesser directors can make animated films that don't need to be animated, and this film needs to be animated. It could only happen in the medium of animation, and that's really what I love that he brought to Tintin.
Yeah, and it's now that you mentioned that, the transitions probably were one of my favorite things in the movie.
It's awesome.
I love a fun transition, and there's like a ton of them in this.
There's so many. There's so many.
When Haddock's having like his like alcohol like hallucination of all the Red Rackham and Captain Haddock stuff, it's like transition after transition. Like I think every time it goes back and forth there's like some like really cool transition.
So good.
Like I think one time it's even like like a close up on a sword, and it's a reflection back to like modern times, and then it goes back to the like so fun, so cool.
Brilliant.
But I mean, the design of this movie I think is really interesting. It's so obviously Weta Digital does all like the concept art, the concept design for the characters and the environments. They're doing a lot of work of like, obviously, like you want to respect and honor like the original art of Hergé. It's iconic. You want to do it, but you can't really do in this like photorealistic sort of environment the clear line style. And so they kind of have to find ways to like give homage to Hergé's style, and so a lot of it comes through in with each character. They found like, okay, what is the most caricatured part of this character? Let's like overemphasize that. So like you have the nose on Haddock. Tintin's probably like the least caricatured of all of them. I mean,
hair.
It's just the hair. Yeah.
What do you think of the animation, especially on the characters? I know one of the biggest criticisms of this film still is that it can veer into Uncanny Valley. So how do you feel?
I didn't feel it. So like, I hate the Polar Express because it creeps me out.
The dead eyes.
I just can't do it with the Polar Express. I didn't get that with this movie. I didn't feel that.
I agree. I agree. I don't feel that. But I do know that is what people's toughest thing is with the film.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I wouldn't fault somebody for feeling that way. Like I get where you're coming from if you feel that way, but this one I do think it veers enough into cartoony.
Yes.
That it doesn't feel like to trying to be lifelike. You know?
And I think it is that exactly like what I was talking about. Them talking about like trying to make sure to overemphasize like the caricatured aspects. So like there's not a real person that has a nose that big,
right?
Like, and so like you're watching a cartoon. So it's kind of like it reminds me of the Lion King, the quote unquote live action Lion King,
right.
Like that is sort of Uncanny Valley because you have like you're trying to like show emotions on animals, but without actually like giving them faces that emote at all. Where they would have done better to kind of like caricaturize the animals in some way, in my opinion, to kind of be able to allow them to emote feelings with their faces.
Definitely.
And so that's like with the Polar Express, you're just trying to make the kids look photorealistic.
Yeah.
And it's just like it throws you off and it creeps me out. I don't like it. And so
I totally agree.
So, but with this one, with this movie, it's very much like, yes, it's photorealistic, but it's like, it's a cartoon still because of the way that they designed the characters. So really, like, I didn't feel, because I kept, I was kind of like bracing myself for that when I hit play on the movie. But it gets rolling, and really like the most photorealistic character is probably the cartoon artist that looks like Hergé at the beginning, and I think they were just trying to, really like give homage to him and honor him. But really, like Tintin has the ridiculous hair, and then all the characters kind of are like very cartoony looking, even if they are a bit photorealistic in their like rendering. Their features are cartoonish.
I think it works well against the environments as well. Like I think the environments find the right balance between being cartoony and feeling like you're really immersed in the environment. And so I think that helps emphasize the cartoony nature of the human characters. Mm-hmm. I really do enjoy the animation style overall. I do wonder though, you mentioned earlier, like, how difficult it would be to emulate the clean line animation. Mm-hmm. I do wonder though today what a Tintin film would look like.
Yeah.
Because in a Spider-Verse sort of or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem style, I do feel like you could do something really cool, making it look like the comic strips come to life. But obviously that's a very different movie than what Spielberg would be making. Yeah,
very much so. But I love those are really great examples of like comic books come to life. But both of those they're a little different in how they render it, but
obviously those styles are complicated and messy, which Tintin wouldn't or shouldn't be, but
right.
But I am curious what that would look like.
Yeah, I think some of it comes through too with like the cartoon physics, which is something that's one thing I couldn't decide like if I liked it or not, because that's the one thing in this like environment and with these characters that like would throw me off a bit, because most of the time it's trying to like go by like normal physics, but then every once in a while when there's like some like cartoony like gag action going on, like with the Thompsons like running into a lamppost and like bouncing backwards all cartoon like, I'm like, it throws me off for a second. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like based on comic strips, like it's supposed to be cartoon. So that's the one thing is like the cartoon physics that it kind of, because it doesn't employ it like all the time. It's just like every once in a while when it's convenient or like for a gag, it'll do like some weird cartoon physics that kind of like throws me off for a second.
I do think they could have amped that up. I think that's another feature of Spielberg not being an animation director.
Sure.
But I can't fault that criticism for sure.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where like, again, like a rewatch might do me good because then I could just like kind of accept it from the get-go and be like, yeah, sometimes they're going, even though it looks more real, they're going to act like, you know, Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I guess the other thing, I can't remember where I had this in my notes, so I'll talk about it now. How did you feel about the way like the camera movement would be in like more still muted scenes? Because that was something that like I really couldn't figure out why the camera was like moving like you were on the ocean even when you were like on dry land.
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of extra camera movement for this, for sure. Again, going back to what we've been saying this whole time, like the Spielberg at play, you know?
Yeah.
I do think he was just taking advantage of the ease of moving the camera through the scenes, you know?
Because it would be like, you know, so when they were like on the ship, I can kind of understand like the kind of like bounciness, floatiness of the camera. You're trying to like emulate that, but then it would do like similar things when you're like, I don't know, in a house or something, and it's the characters are talking and the camera's kind of like, I guess he was going for like a handheld feel.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
But it didn't translate all that well for me. And it was a little distracting for me personally. Sometimes. So that if I had any like quibbles with like the way it was like all put together, that would be like one of the main ones probably, is just like, man, I kept getting distracted a little bit by all the play that he was doing with the camera. That's another way that it kind of showed up for me. But yeah, so motion capture, we've got to talk about that because it's very interesting. How it all happens. So you have an area called the volume. That's what they call it. Which sounds like it could be like a good sci-fi movie. But it's basically like a 3D space. Like I said, about the size of a basketball court. And you have about 160-ish cameras mounted all around from all angles on the ceiling, pointing into it. And basically actors that are wearing the motion caption gear, which is basically like a suit that reflects the light a certain way. And they have like this headgear on with a camera pointing at their face. They use a mask they like map out their faces individually, paint dots using a mask on their face. So there's all these dots on their face that the camera on their head mount picks up. And so like they're wearing all this stuff. And when they go into the space, these virtual cameras basically like render them in 3D, like live. And so Spielberg, or whoever's operating the virtual camera, basically has this like huge video game controller with a screen on it. So there wasn't an equivalent to that back then. So Peter Jackson said it's like he has a PlayStation controller, but really it's more like he has a Switch, you know, Nintendo Switch, but a really big one with joysticks.
I've gotten to play with one of those before.
Yeah.
I was at Pixar last year before Inside Out 2, and they sort of mocked up what it's like when they explore a scene.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got to pick up it's a camp, like at least the one, you know, of course. This is last year, you know, 12 years later. But yeah, it really was like a camera rig, but just virtual. And so I was watching what I was doing as I was walking around the Inside Out characters. It's fascinating.
Cool. Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, the one Spielberg had, because it shows up him using it a lot. It really is like a Nintendo Switch, but like huge. And so he's just looking down. He'll be like in the scene. So the technology had advanced enough where like Spielberg could be like on the set and the virtual cameras wouldn't pick him up.
That's cool.
Because he was just in like street clothes. And so he would just be walking around like on the set with like right next to the actors, like, and you can see him like moving joysticks around basically to move the camera. And so, yeah, he's just standing there in the middle of the set, like moving the camera around. It really is like play, like he's playing. Yeah. But yeah, so it's really cool. The team came in and like it took like 1 month of setup before they started shooting to get everything ready. Weta, I guess I would assume, is based out of New Zealand. Because that's where Peter Jackson is, and it's his company. So they brought in they had to bring in like all their servers, all their stage stuff, all their like wireframes, so that they basically build, like, instead of normal sets, they build these like small miniature like wireframe sets. So everything's made in like wireframe form so that the light can pass through them and the cameras don't really recognize them, but it gives the actors like actual things to interact with. So like you have you'll see Andy Serkis with this wireframe like beer bottle, whiskey bottle, like playing with that or drinking from that all the time on set. They have like wireframe, overturned rowboat, a wireframe like rig that's supposed to like emulate like a camel or the motorcycle. Even like wireframe desks when they're like sword fighting around the desk, so everything, I touched on this when I was talking about Andy Serkis earlier, but they really are like in an environment. It's a very like different sort of environment than a normal set, but they are like interacting with each other. And they are interacting with real like objects that are like stand-ins for what will be rendered digitally. So it's really cool to watch. Serkis and Jamie Bell both like did pretty much all of their own stunts. And there was a lot of stunts to be done in the movie. Like they were actually doing it. All this jumping around and sword fighting, and it was fun to watch some of that. But it is a little bit weird because they're in these like weird looking suits with the headgear on. But I'm sure you've seen some of that like behind the scenes stuff with motion capture before.
Definitely. Yeah.
If you haven't, go watch them because it's interesting. They had like over 500 wireframe props that they had on set. So it's really interesting. It's something that like all the actors they kind of had all the actors give a little spiel on how fun it was, how interesting it was, how like like I said, Serkis was the only motion capture veteran, so all of them, it was just like totally new, totally different. But it turns out really well. And then the cool thing is it doesn't take a whole lot of time. They were on the set for 32 days. I'm sure like Jamie Bell and Serkis were there for most of that, but a lot of the other characters, I mean, you have like, I think Cary Elwes, who was the pilot for the airplane, he was like, I was there for 1 day, like, and he's done, so there's some pros to that as far as that goes. Even Snowy had some different prop Snowies that the property master guy was like rolling around on the floor and like chasing the characters with.
That's great.
So they had like a rolling one, a soft one that they could like land on. It was fun. But yeah, they did Snowy. How did you like Snowy? We haven't really talked at all about Snowy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Snowy is a great cinema dog.
Yeah.
I think he has that. He actually contributes to the mission, and he finds right at the beginning he finds the little vial thing with the note in it, and I think he's exactly the right sidekick for Tintin to help propel the story along. So I think it was done really well, and it's especially, I think the animation of Snowy was great because it's able to be even more cartoony than the human characters. And so I think Snowy looked great as well.
Yeah, he looked really good. The animators talked about the fur obviously is the hardest thing to do, but they like basically rendered like combable fur. So like when all of the fur was they were able to basically like, manipulate the fur individually, make it bounce how it was supposed to bounce. But yeah, I'm sure that took a ton of time to render that and get it to look right. It was one of the fun things was the sound mixer was talking about all the different dog sounds he came up with. So he said it's like 25-ish dogs that make up Snowy's voice, and there's like 3 or 4 like main ones, but it's like a mix of a total of like 25.
Wow.
And the funniest thing was he was like, basically Snowy has the last word of the movie. It's like it does the little zoom in, and Snowy makes a little noise, and he said I labored over what that noise should be for hours and hours.
Sure.
But yeah, so basically they finish up like I said, Michael Kahn. It takes about a month, and he gets Michael Kahn is like, he's fast, man. I think he's faster with film than most people are with digital footage.
Yeah.
But he gets it out, the cut to the Weta in about a month, and it's from there. It's typical like 2-year animation to get the movie out structure. And it was about 1.5 to 2 years later before it was completed. They, they had to build out all the environments. They had to build out all the, when you think about these movies like this or a Pixar movie, when you're like in Tintin's apartment, for instance, all of those like furniture and all of those like items that are like rolling around in the desk drawer when he pulls it out, all of those they have to like design individually and then place them in the environment to like interact with the movement of everything. And then you have the cat come in and like everything's getting thrown everywhere. All of those little objects, from like big things like furniture to like a little pin or something, is individually like designed and made and placed in the environment. So it's a lot of work.
Hugely labor intensive time. That's why these movies take forever.
And they have a huge variety of environments to build too. Just like the main ones is like Tintin's neighborhood. You have the market. You have the Caraboujan ship. You have the whole like city of Bagar, basically. And then you have natural ones too, which might be even harder, like the desert and the ocean. Water is hard in and of itself to render animation.
They always say the hardest things are water and fur, or water and hair are the hardest things to animate.
And so and then you have like the actors' movements, but you have to build all the textures and clothes and hair and perspiration and all that stuff. And so the team started with like 5 to 6 people to start it off, but it ended with over 900 artists working on it, which makes sense if you're familiar with animation. But yeah, I think Kathleen Kennedy was talking about how she was learning that each frame basically takes like 4 to 5 hours of work. And when you think about movies like at this time were being made at like 24 frames per second. So every second you have whatever, I'm not even going to do the math in my head, whatever 24 times 4 hours of work is for just each second of the movie. It's a lot of work. I'll let someone with a calculator do the math on that. September 15th, 2011, Spielberg does his traditional end of shooting toast, which is at the end of the completion of the film by Weta instead of the end of like their physical shooting. tons of people on the video conference call. Those are always fun to watch. Everyone celebrating finishing a movie. They put out their first marketing in May 2011. They got, of course, the Tintin files, or whatever you want to call them. They had some concerns, but the filmmakers kind of knew that was going to happen because when the animation style is so different than the comic animation that, it was inevitable. They did present an excerpt of it at Comic-Con that year, so that's fun to see. But yeah, it released in Europe at the end of October in 2011. It got its world premiere in Brussels to honor Hergé, October 22nd. And it wasn't until December 21st that it got its U.S. release. So, yeah, it's interesting. What's interesting about the release of this movie is it's released basically the same weekend as War Horse.
Yeah.
So War Horse released on Christmas Day, just 4 days later. So I think it was limited on the 21st, wider on the 22nd. So really like 3 days later, War Horse is out in theaters too. And you almost wonder if they like cannibalized each other's box office potential.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're wildly different movies.
Yes, yeah.
But no, totally. I haven't watched War Horse since 2011. So like sure. I don't have a lot of memories other than thinking that it is one of the lesser Spielbergs. But I was definitely there for both movies, and but yeah, I mean, they're so different that I one's clearly in the Oscar market and one got Oscar nominations, but is more of a commercial family sort of environment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have not seen War Horse yet. That's a blind spot for me, so I'll be watching it very soon for an upcoming episode. But it's just interesting. I just don't understand the decision there because Tintin wasn't ready for the summer, but it feels very much like a summer release, not a Christmas release. And War Horse feels like a Christmas release,
It does, yeah.
But it wasn't ready in the summer. And do you want to wait a whole another 6 months? I guess not. So I guess it makes sense.
They've already been working on the film for 2 years and then also 25 years.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So it opens. So Tintin opens at number 5. It made 15 million domestic open weekend. War Horse opened at number 7. So it did. Tintin started out stronger. War Horse started with 14.5 million, but I do think so. Tintin ended up at over 70 million domestic, and I think War Horse did outgross it domestically by maybe a couple $1 million.
Its grosses when I was looking at that today, I was shocked at how low Tintin's grosses were.
Yeah, domestically.
Great. Yeah. Internationally, it did. But it did. It seems to me as I'm looking at these numbers, 12 years, 15 years later, whatever. Yeah. It did internationally about what I would guess that it did. It would do. That international number looked pretty normal.
Yeah, it was about 300 million international.
But to only gross 70 million in the States, that's wild to me. I think if it was released today, it would do much better than that.
Yeah,
with the right release strategy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think 2011 is a weird movie year in general, but yeah, very strange to see how low how honestly that is a bad performance.
Yeah,
that's not a good performance.
Yeah. I mean, Trolls sequels probably make 500 million domestic.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So, rightfully so.
I haven't seen any Trolls movies, so that was not. It wasn't a educated shot at Trolls. I don't know anything about the movies.
They're big in our household. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't unlocked that Pandora's box here yet.
Hey, you can do worse. There are worse animated films.
But yeah, so we've actually been doing. My wife had the idea to do musicals March, so we've been watching
Nice.
musicals with the kids all March, and so
What?
So we did Singing in the Rain,
Nice.
Mary Poppins. What else did we do? We did the animated movie version of Your Good Man Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
The Prince of Egypt they hadn't seen. What else? I watched. My wife isn't into Muppets, but I watched the original Muppet movie with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we've hit some good ones with them. I can't. It seems like there's one or two more, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But
that's awesome. I haven't done Singing in the Rain with them yet, but that's one of my favorites of all time.
My daughter walks around. She's 2 years old, and she walks around singing in the rain all the time. She knows all the words to the titular song.
That's awesome.
So
my kids are huge into musicals. Like they love Wicked. Oh my gosh, they love Wicked. And yeah, they just love musicals in general. And so yeah, I've been waiting to do Singing in the Rain. The way we do this is totally an aside. So sorry for taking us on.
No,
a tangent
I love
here.
it.
Got movie dads, you know.
Yeah.
What I made for my kids years ago. I think I started when they were like 3 or maybe 4. We call it movie box. Basically, just I have a little box and I've designed like little slips of paper with all these different movies on them. Yeah. And so it's time for movie night. We draw something out of movie box. I found that to be such a great way to like get the kids excited to watch new stuff instead of just watching, the same stuff over and over again. They're like actively like can't wait to watch the stuff in movie box, and so that's the way we've done movie night, and then have we put out an air mattress and make like a whole thing. So that has been that's one of my greatest inventions. That's a free idea for anyone listening.
No, that's a great idea.
It's gotten the kids so excited about like anything, like any old films, new films, anything that I think they need to see. It's really been an awesome way to sort of like educate or propagandize my children towards movie loving.
Yeah, we've done not exactly that. Our thing is we bribe with like popcorn.
Nice.
So it's like you get to have popcorn, and it's like, okay, I'll watch it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My son went through a phase where if you asked him, hey, do you want to watch this movie? He would just say, no, I don't want to watch a movie.
Oh, yes. My kids absolutely went through that same phase.
And so like, but he's gotten out like, one of the things I'll do is like, if there's a milestone coming up, I'll be like, okay, when this comes, like, we're going to watch this movie. And like, he's resistant at first, but the more you build it up. So like, it's like when you turn 6, the way I phrased it is you have to watch Star Wars. And so he was resistant at first. I was like, no, that's the rule. When you turn 6, you have to watch Star Wars. That's the rules. And so
that's awesome.
So on his birthday, literally on his birthday, we watched Star Wars, and he was immediately like, I want to watch the next one. So
nice. No, we did almost the exact same thing. We watched it. I think I was trying to get them to watch it when they were like 5, but I think they were a little bit scared because we'll tell them something's an adult movie or whatever. Like they're not. I guess we should use a different phrase. But we'll tell them something's a movie for grown-ups, and they'll think it's. I think they just think that a grown-up movie means scary.
Sure.
Obviously, it doesn't mean that, but. So
no, it means
boring.
That's what it
right, exactly. That's exactly what it means. And so I think they were scared of Star Wars at first because they thought like they had been too young for it. But yeah, we've sort of removed that. We actually just started 2 weeks ago. This is probably, you can judge me all you want. It's totally fine. I started them on the Marvel movies. Okay. I was like, look, I know they're 6 years old, but like they dig superheroes. Sure. I was like, all right, we're going for it. We're going for it. So, and they've been loving it. We're 2 in. We watched Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, and they love it. So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's great. We haven't gotten into that yet. I know we will, because it'll be fun. I definitely was like one of the people that got serious like Marvel fatigue at one point.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But yeah, I'm excited to eventually like dig into those with him.
It's cool seeing them like, start to love superheroes and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
that's been fun. Anyway, none of that has anything to do with Tintin. I'm so sorry. Total aside.
It sort of does. You know, Tintin's a movie you would watch with your kids, so.
Yeah, there you go.
But
Hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show.
no good transition here, so we'll just jump back.
Jump back in.
The box office numbers, it wasn't great. It ended up at 374 million worldwide, which isn't really bad. It's not exactly a flop. You could call it a flop domestically because I think it was I remember saying $130-ish million budget. And so you don't make back your money domestically. And so for studios, I think that's a problem. Even though you make it up internationally, sometimes the way rights go and who gets that money, sometimes that doesn't work out right. So, and this was a Paramount Sony thing. So a lot of times it'll be Paramount will be okay, we'll take domestic, Sony, you take international. And so if that was the case, it could be one of the studios was very unhappy with what they got. So we've said it already, but we've lamented not getting the Peter Jackson sequel. But when you look at those numbers, it's okay, I understand why they weren't any of them, honestly, why Spielberg or Peter Jackson weren't leaping to make the next one, because it kind of did seem, at least domestically, that people weren't all that into it, really. Yeah, which is a shame, because
it is.
The Europeans were really excited about this movie, and it's a shame that we took away sequels from them.
Totally.
Number one at the box office, interestingly enough, outgrossed in this weekend what Tintin made domestically, which was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
Of course. Yeah.
Which we could totally follow another bunny trail and talk about being excited for Final Reckoning, but we probably shouldn't.
The only aside I'll give is, I said, I was just at CinemaCon yesterday. Tom Cruise was there for Universal's presentation, Paramount's presentation, and it really felt like they were saying goodbye. It really, he did a whole thing honoring.
I'm gonna cry watching this movie.
It was wild. He spent, because he talked for 30 minutes, and he was talking about he was honoring everybody who's made the movies, thanking all the directors who've done all the Mission Impossible movies. He was really It genuinely, it's called The Final Reckoning,
right?
But it really felt like I was watching an in memoriam sequence for the series. So, wow.
Yeah. Let's talk about the reception of this movie. So European criticism was a little mixed. So some of the publications, Le Soir was a daily newspaper. They said it was, quote, paced, colorful, full of relief. The film alternates the plot and the game of tracks with a background that is often lively, light, and sometimes even hilarious, unquote. So basically just saying, so Game of Tracks is just the sound mixing, I think, basically, for people that don't know what that means. But it's basically just saying, it's fun.
right.
Exactly what we said about it. But then you have La Libre Belgique. They saluted Haddock's alcoholism being retained. I guess they were afraid that the Americans were gonna take stuff like that out, which they didn't. But called it Raiders of the Lost Unicorn, and deplored the fact that it played too much like Indy, which I guess is maybe unfair, because Indy you could argue plays like Tintin.
Yeah, it's hard to say without knowing the source material myself too much.
Right.
But I mean, it does share a lot with Indiana Jones. So
right.
I understand that criticism.
Yeah, and I understand it. And it is what it is. It was kind of a recurrent European critique that felt the excess of adventure and noise and frantic pace. And I guess like thinking about it, European films aren't typically like that sort of pacing. I think European film viewers and critics probably have a little bit more patience with their movies than American audiences often do. So that's probably fair that they felt that way about it. And even like the opinions were mixed on the adaptation of Hergé's style. Some thought that the challenge was met with success, and others felt that it like destroyed fidelity to the original material. So you kind of have like mixed reviews across the board. And the same thing in America, really. So the injection of the indie was not lost on American viewers, obviously. But no one really seemed offended by that. They were like, yeah, great.
Yeah.
One of the exceptions was the New York Times, which said, quote, "Relax, you think, as Tintin and the story rush off again, as if Mr. Spielberg were afraid of losing us, the American public, with European-style longueurs." So, yeah, the New York Times, I think I'm like 50-50 there with the New York Times. Sometimes I feel like it's like, oh man, I wish it would slow down for just a second and let me catch my breath. And,
sure.
Which I think indie films do really well. And I think that was maybe something that was lacking in this movie, was like, something that Spielberg usually is like phenomenal at. You see it mostly like in the indie movies in Jurassic Park, where you have a slow down moment where there's like really deep character development, and then you use that character development to launch back into action with like even greater stakes, basically, because you're more connected to the character, you're more connected to their stakes that they have. And there's not really that at all in Tintin.
Yeah, that's definitely my biggest, complaint for the film is there's none of it. I mean, there's really none, at all.
Yeah.
This is just an adventure for fun, and there's no. You're right. There aren't those moments of character development or of enriching the story, or And I do think that is where it can lose audience. Like, it's another one of those complaints that I don't fault anybody for feeling if they feel like, they didn't connect to the story. I get it. I mean, I connected to the fun of it,
right? And
so that works for me when I lean into that side of it. But like, there is no deeper theme to this. There is no richer story underneath. It's just Tintin going to find this thing.
Yeah, and in my notes in my themes section, I have one one note under themes, and it is "Go after adventure?" ?
Yeah. I mean, there's really not much else to it.
It's just a fun movie. And then Tintin, he doesn't feel like, indie is pretty one-dimensional. Like, he doesn't really change a whole lot, but he does have like emotional moments with other characters. That are like either touching or like help you like understand who he is, even if he's like not a super dynamic character, he still has like moments where you understand who he is.
Or the adventure is tied into something deeper, The
Last Crusade is the best example of that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. The relationship between him and his dad is so rich. And or even things like fighting Nazis. That's a theme that we still need to hear today, and so I think that works. Whereas Tintin doesn't even have anything as surface level, I guess, as fighting Nazis.
Yeah.
It doesn't really even have that. It's just kind of generally fighting bad guys, I guess. You know?
And it's hard to really latch on to him as a character because of that. Like, he feels less of a character and more of like a mover of the plot.
That's fair.
And I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm not connected to the source material at all, but I feel like if I was, I would feel like they cheaped out Tintin and didn't give him enough like depth. But again, I don't know, maybe the source material, he doesn't really have that either. I
kind of feel like again, we're making assumptions here. I kind of don't think that he does, because I mean, when you look at the cartoons and think about the stories that they're telling there, they are very light stories. So, again, maybe we'd feel differently if we read the comics or the cartoons, but I kind of think this seems to me to have been his at least what Spielberg perceived to be a faithful adaptation of fun and mystery rather than something deeper emotionally.
And I think the one thing that it's missing that seems to from, again, this is from like reliable sources, that like he would try to include some sort of like social or political commentary on like current events even. Sure. And so like it doesn't really have that, but like I don't really blame Spielberg necessarily for not trying to include that, but the last note on reception I had, because I thought it was funny, was Roger Ebert, the man, the myth, the legend, thought it was great fun, and he gave it 875 portholes, which apparently was a joke derived from a catechism, which is mille sabords, which means 1,000 portholes. So I guess that's equivalent to an 8.75 out of 10.
There we go.
It did get Oscar nominated for the score. It got a BAFTA nomination for Best Animated and VFX. And the only thing it won was Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature. But
I am still so surprised that it didn't receive a nomination for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. Very strange. Very strange. I mean, at that time, I believe... 2011 was a weird year for the Oscars and for awards, but it was eligible. I went and looked it back, because sometimes the Oscars have interesting eligibility rules about motion capture and things like that. But it was eligible. And then I looked to see if it was submitted for animated feature, because with something like the Lion King remake for Disney, they did not submit that because they don't want it to be considered animated. So I was like wondering if Spielberg did something similar, didn't submit it for animated feature, but he did. So It was submitted, it was eligible. The Academy just didn't go for it.
Yeah. I was looking at the others. The other nominees were Puss in Boots, Chico and Rita, which I don't know what that is.
It's good.
Okay, good to know. Kung Fu Panda 2, Jack Black fun, and A Cat in Paris, which I also don't know. But I wasn't plugged in so much back then, so usually I try to see all these, but I wasn't.
Chico and Rita is really cool. It's very stylized, stylistic, a little bit more of an adult animated film, sort of.
Yeah. And
really great style. So those are great nominees.
Yeah.
Cat in Paris
Rango
is good
won.
as well. Yeah, Rango.
I like Rango.
Rango's great.
Yeah.
I love Rango. I think Rango's great. So that would probably be my winner of the year as well. But still, I would absolutely put Tintin in there. I'd put it in above.
Probably Kung Fu Panda 2.
I would put it in
or
above
Puss in Boots, really.
I would say Tintin's my second favorite animated film of that year, below Rango. I think it's really, really, truly great.
Yeah, I would put Rango above it still as well.
But it's strange in a year where Pixar had its first ever fumble. That was when Cars 2 came out. So it's almost like there was this opening for another big animated film to come out, and for it to still not get the nomination, and after winning the Golden Globe too. So very interesting. I do, again, sometimes the Academy has strange strange backlashes. You know, that was one of the more prominent motion capture animated films to come out. So my guess, I wasn't following as closely back then. My guess is there were some rumblings about that. I'd have to do some research, but I would imagine some rumblings about like motion capture that's not real animation or something like that, you know?
Yeah, Academy is usually a little bit behind on that sort of stuff.
They can be.
They're
They can be.
catching up to, to that sort of thing. But, you know, we're finally, I think, getting to a point where movies like Anora can win Best Picture.
Yeah.
And
this year at the Oscars was an entirely just new field. I mean, talk about animation having Flow. Did you ever see Flow?
I did. I got to see it in theater.
Nice.
Yeah.
So good.
Which I'm so glad I did, because it would have been so easy to be distracted at home from a movie like that. But in theater, it was great.
Incredible. Yeah.
It's the Wild Robot also was really fun.
Oh yeah.
That was another read aloud to my son, and then we got to go to the theater and see it.
The Wild Robot books are some of the favorite books we've read together.
We're
me
reading
and my kids.
We're reading Escapes, the second one, right now. So
we just finished the third one like last week.
Nice.
They're incredible books. I'm so surprised.
They make me tear up. I'm just being honest.
They're really. They're so, like I said, we read so many books, so many kids' books, and those are some of the best we've read together.
Yeah, very good. As a little Wild Robot plug for people out there. I mean, as far as like just our thoughts on the movie, we've hit a lot of the stuff already that I had in my notes. Is there anything like in your notes that we haven't really touched on that you want to hit?
We have hit most of it. I mean, one thing I wrote in my notes about that I was thinking through at the beginning of the film. I think a lesser version of the story would have tried to give us like an origin story for Tintin like what makes Tintin want to solve these mysteries or you know, what happened to his family or all those different things. Like you can totally see I had that thought as we first entered his apartment, you know, after he bought the ship and all that, and we see the news clippings on his wall that he's already solved all these mysteries and he's already been hard at work doing all these different stories. And I was like, I love that. We don't see that now. Like every story is an origin story nowadays. Yeah. And I was like, nah, we're joining Tintin in the middle of his fantastic journey. And so I really appreciated that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that. I do kind of get the draw of the enigma of Tintin. Like, you don't really know what's going on, so you're with him or like who he is. So you're just like, I don't know who this kid is, but he seems pretty cool.
Yeah, he's pretty smart.
Yeah. And even like, you know, it starts off with him buying like this model ship, and so like he's taking it home, and in my mind I'm thinking like, oh, like I guess he collects stuff like this, and then he gets home and it's like the only thing like that there. He just like saw it and was like, oh, this is cool, I'm gonna buy it.
Sure. For $1. Yeah. I thought that was great.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely an enigma. So I think you already said what your favorite action set piece in the movie was.
Yeah, definitely that big long chase.
Yeah, so that would be the Bagar chase, like with the motorcycle. That's kind of like the iconic image of the movie is Haddock in the sidecar and Tintin on the motorcycle. So, but
I also love a lot of the comedic sequences as well.
Yeah,
you know, I think they utilize animation really well, and it takes advantage of the medium. Like I think to one of my favorite sequences is where Thompson and Thompson run into the pickpocket and then they go into his apartment, and I think that is comic gold. Yeah. It's so good and would have been you know, even dumber in live action. Like that kind of would have felt stupider. But in animation, it's like, nah, this works. This is great. These are just two bumbling dumb guys, you know? And so I loved sequences like that really made it feel like this is why it's animated, because they can do stuff like this that would feel totally different in a live action setting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was even going to say, I think out of all like the comedic stuff, the stuff with the pickpocket was one of my favorites, I think. I think so. I've already talked about like I think the Bagar chase sequence is like really incredible and fun to see Spielberg having fun. It's one of those things where like I've already talked about it. Like it's a bit. It takes me out of the movie a little bit just because I can see that Spielberg's having fun, and that's kind of what I'm seeing instead of like seeing what's happening in the movie.
Sure.
But one that I really thought was fun, in hindsight, like looking back, I was like, what was one that was fun that maybe doesn't get talked about as much? And I think the kind of like intertangling of the two like old ships in the flashbacks, like that sequence was really fun. And in that one, and maybe it's because it's a darker, like it's stormy, maybe the way the lighting works with the dark, you know, that Kaminsky touch with the shadows and stuff. I think that the camera is doing similar stuff in that sequence, kind of floating all around. But I guess because like you're on the ocean, you have like this, you know, the lighting is different. Maybe that just worked better for me. I was able to like be in it a little bit more.
Sure.
And I really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was like very, like, obviously like the whole, like the mass intertangling, is
right.
kind of like very cartoonish. Like,
Oh yeah.
you're watching, you're like, that would never happen. But, you know, it's fun. It's like a fun way to like get pirates going from ship to ship. That's different than usual. And
I thought it was super creative.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of mirrored with the cranes at the end where they get entangled.
Yeah, that one was okay.
Wasn't as exciting. Yeah, I agree.
It was kind of anticlimactic, I would say.
It is. But there are moments that are just really smart touches that didn't need to be there, but that elevate it. Like in the crane sequence, when they do smash together, there are the swinging lights above Saccharin. That is just, again, you didn't need it. You could have just had some standard lighting there, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But because it has these lights that are swinging two different directions, the shadows are just moving in such interesting ways. Yeah, that I was like, man, I love the attention to detail in a scene like this.
Yeah, and you also have like after they're out of the cranes, you have like the mirroring of Red Rackham coming down the mast in silhouette with Saccharin coming down towards Haddock in silhouette, which I thought was cool. I wrote down a few quotes that I like. I really love it when Tintin has the model ship in his apartment. At the very beginning, is one of the things that was like made me excited for what was to come. Is he's looking at it and he says, "What secrets do you hold?" And I was like, "Oh, that was a great line." Like, what is he gonna get into? You know?
Yeah.
My other favorite line. This is just like a personal thing. He's asking like Tintin if he knows how to pilot, and Tintin says more or less. And this is a joke that I do all the time. Haddock says, "Well, which is it, more or less?" And I actually say that all the time whenever people say more or less. I'm like, "Well, which one?"
Nice. That's great.
And so when he said that, I was like, "Hey, that's my joke," you know.
Nice. That's great.
But yeah, I really like. I guess the only thing we haven't talked about is that Haddock is really the only one that does have an emotional arc of some sense in the movie. It's like very shallow. It's like he's an alcoholic and now he's trying not to be, I guess.
Right. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. I think they do a decent job of like leaning into the seriousness of his alcoholism in a way that's still like friendly for children. Like it's a fine line to walk, and I think they do it pretty well.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing that you wouldn't know unless you were a comic reader that I heard is that actually Snowy is basically an alcoholic in the comics. Like Snowy likes alcohol about as much as Haddock does, and so
they have that.
They do
that
have
moment,
that,
when where it's floating.
yeah, where Snowy gets the first bit, and then Haddock steals the other bit from him. So
That's
great. it's kind of like, it's probably, I guess, like a little Easter egg for the fans of the comics, but
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, there's not really, like we said, the theme is have fun while you're watching the movie, I think. So
yeah, it succeeds for me at least.
Yeah. As just kind of a final thought, I thought this movie was good, like fine, okay. I didn't think it was great. It's like, for me, it's kind of like one of those solid, like 3-star movies that I enjoyed watching. But like, wasn't like, I didn't walk away from it like, oh, like I've got to watch that again.
Sure.
But like positive, but like not enthralled, I guess.
Sure. I think I'm more positive, I think, than you are. I think I give this an 8 out of 10. I think it is just a really fun adventure, I think this is one thing that I love about Spielberg's films that very few other filmmakers do, is he can take you on an adventure that's made purely for the movies. You can't really accomplish. I mean, again, all due respect to the comics that I haven't read. Yeah. But there's a sense of adventure and a grandness that I think is distinctly Spielbergian. Yeah. That you get in Tintin, and or at least that I get in Tintin. And so that's really what I love about it. Yeah. And it's not necessarily a Spielberg that I think about often. It definitely is an outlier on his filmography, but you can still see the history in his filmography that led up to this film, and even afterwards. with something like Ready Player One we didn't discuss earlier. Yeah. It has a lot of elements of this. So yeah, I do think I think there's a lot of Spielberg's history that's sort of tied into what brings us to Tintin. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that I noted too was just, it always seems like there's moments where like Spielberg comes in and really works on redefining like what something in film can do. Yeah. A lot of times dealing with technology. He likes to utilize technology. And I think other people are more prominent in the motion capture world as far as like, the way Peter Jackson and James Cameron have utilized it. Yeah. I think you would point to them as like the pioneers. But Spielberg coming in and making something like this is still like a big deal. And he's always trying to like get on board with this stuff, and sometimes he's the pioneer, like with Jurassic Park. And sometimes he's just like along with the ride with some of the other masters and pioneers and trying to push it forward. And I just appreciate that in film technology, and guys like Spielberg being willing to like try new things. I mean, he could just go make another Spielberg movie and make a bunch of money, and but he's like out here walking around with a giant Nintendo Switch in 2011 and 2009, and with wireframes surrounding him, and just having a good time. And I just appreciate that. I love.
It's why he's one of the greats.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have on Tintin. I don't, it was a fun movie. I'm glad I watched it. I'll probably watch it with my son sometime in the future. And I don't know that the 2-year-old would be into it, but
sure.
But yeah, so yeah, do you have any final thoughts before we go, or covered it all?
I think we really covered it all. I'm a fan. I like this movie a lot. I am excited to read my first Tintin book with my kids, and see what sort of new appreciation or not this gives me for the film.
Yeah. Well, yeah, keep me posted on that.
For sure.
Yeah. And it is good to know too that, you gave it less portholes than Roger Ebert. You gave it 800 portholes. He gave it 875. So
there you go.
There are bigger fans of the movie out there than you. Yeah. But yeah, so coming up on the podcast, we have, I'm not sure exactly what I'll be releasing next week. I might release an old movie draft that's in an old episode and re-release that. But we'll see. Well, you'll just have to tune in and see what happens. But the week after that, we'll be digging into Warhorse, so that's going to be fun. Actually, I take that back. We're doing that a few weeks out. 2 weeks from now, it'll be episode 100, because this is supposed to be episode 98. Fingers crossed. And so I'll probably be doing like it's podcast scheduling is crazy. Because it's April right now, and I can't even wrap my mind around this, but I'll probably do like a best of the year so far episode and kind of maybe do some reflections on 100 episodes. But so that'll be fun. But and then Warhorse will come after that.
Nice.
So
nice.
That's what's coming up. So that's what you have look forward to. Just to cap it all off, Daniel, do you want to plug like maybe some good places for people to find you and your work, and maybe Next Best Picture as well?
Yeah, you can find Next Best Picture at nextbestpicture.com and on all the socials. And you can find me at HowatDK on all the social platforms. Mostly on Twitter is where I spend a lot of my time, unfortunately. And then, but a lot of a lot of my CinemaCon recaps and stuff like that you can find on TikTok and Instagram and all the places.
Cool. Yeah, great. And I'll make sure to link all those in the episode description, so you can just go and click it instead of trying to remember the handles. Because I always hate it when someone's like plugging something, but then I have to like go like rewind, find it. So I'll make sure to link all those, and you can find Daniel there. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Maybe not quite as fun as a Tintin adventure, but nonetheless,
close.
But pretty close. Yeah. So thank you, Daniel, for coming on. That's all we have for this week. So I've been Eli Price for Daniel Howat. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We'll see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.